Too bad it didn't go as planned, my husband sneered. You thought you'd just get those divorce papers filed and vanish. I stood there in stunned silence. Ever since my father-in-law's hospitalization, my husband had turned into someone unrecognizable. The words coming from his mouth were unbelievable. We're going to split his inheritance. My mother-in-law chimed in coldly. And you, Lindsay, won't see a penny. A wife who can't even handle housework doesn't deserve anything. I was speechless. When I went to City Hall to file for divorce, I stumbled upon a harsh truth about my life. My name is Lindsay. I'm 24 years old, a housewife. My husband, Austin, is 40. We have what people call a May December romance, but it wasn't some fairy tale. There was no whirlwind courtship. It just happened. It all started when I worked for Austin's father at his construction company. For reasons I still don't fully understand, the company president took a liking to me and began pushing for me to marry his son. It wasn't out of affection, but desperation. Austin, poised to inherit the company, was a man with few prospects, and his father feared the future of the business without an heir. Austin's father, who had long known my family through their own business connections, came to our house one day with a proposal. My father, having once worked for Austin's father and learned the ropes of business from him, couldn't dismiss the offer outright. Still, he hesitated due to the age difference between Austin and me, insisting that we date first before any talk of marriage. I want to respect both Austin's and Lindsay's choices, my father explained, but marriage talks will have to wait until they've spent some time together. Austin, seeing marriage as a stepping stone to taking over the company, agreed without hesitation. At first, things seemed to go well between us. We went on dates, enjoyed each other's company, and slowly grew close. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was enough to believe we could make a marriage work. Soon, we were engaged. Then Austin's father fell ill. I ended up spending a lot of time at the hospital, caring for him while Austin worked and his mother remained indifferent. She told me, "You're going to be my daughter-in-law. You should be focusing more on housework for the family, not the hospital. Hurry up, Lindsay, and get him there before the morning reception ends." Even before the marriage, it felt like I was being treated like a servant. I just responded, "Yes, I'll be right there," and took care of what was needed. One day, my mother-in-law suggested I move in with them temporarily to help care for my father-in-law. It seemed like a good idea, given how often I was going to the hospital, so I agreed. I figured it would be easier to settle in with them since I would have to move in soon anyway. But living with them made me realize why Austin, at 40, had never been in a serious relationship before. He was a stickler for money, meticulously recording every penny he spent. Even on our dates, if we went out to eat, he'd note down the cost of the meal, gas, everything. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was constantly rude, belittling me at every turn, making it clear that I was a servant in their eyes. Austin was generous with his mother, though. She could spend lavishly on vacations and designer goods without a word from him. I began to see it clearly. He was a mama's boy, putting her needs above everything else. I couldn't help but wonder if I had rushed into this marriage too quickly. Maybe I should have gotten to know their dynamics better before saying I do. But then I thought of my father and father-in-law, and the sense of duty kept me going. My father-in-law's love for me was the only thing that made it bearable. One morning, as I prepared to take my father-in-law to the hospital, he'd been feeling worse since yesterday. My mother-in-law's voice cut through the house. "Lindsay, have you made breakfast yet?" She snapped from the couch, barely lifting a finger. "And the cleaning yesterday was terrible. Hurry up and fix it." Austin was sitting next to her, passively watching TV, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. I sighed inwardly, realizing how much I'd underestimated the reality of my situation. "I'm sorry, but I don't have time right now. I need to take your husband to the hospital," I said firmly. My mother-in-law responded with a cold, dismissive tone. "Well, shouldn't you have gotten up earlier then? I have places to go to. Make us breakfast before you leave." I couldn't help but wonder if they ever considered doing anything themselves, especially when they didn't seem to care about their husband or father. "Father-in-law, please hold on, I'll be right with you," I said, rushing to prepare breakfast. I hurriedly served it to Austin and my mother-in-law before finally returning to my father-in-law's side. I helped him sit up, feeling the weight of his age and fragility. "I'm sorry for making you do all this," he apologized, his voice faint, "and I owe your father an apology too." Just then, my father-in-law collapsed in my arms. "Are you okay?" I gasped in horror. Austin and my mother-in-law continued eating, completely unfazed by what had just happened. My heart raced as I called for an ambulance, my mind numb with panic. The sirens wailed in the distance as they drew closer. When the ambulance arrived, my mother-in-law barely looked up from her meal. "Sorry, Lindsay," she said nonchalantly. "I have to go, so you take care of everything." She stood up, with Austin following suit. "I've got work, so lock up before you leave," he added as an afterthought. They walked out, leaving me with my unconscious father-in-law. At the hospital, my father-in-law had regained consciousness. We went through the admission process, and the doctor explained everything. The sky outside had already darkened. "If anything happens to me, Lindsay, I want you to have something," my father-in-law said softly. his eyes meeting mine with a tired gaze. "It's my way of apologizing for everything you've had to endure with my ungrateful son and his wife. I've been too focused on work to notice what's happening at home." Before I could respond, I heard a cough at the door. Austin and my mother-in-law had arrived, walking in with their usual air of indifference. They both approached me, asking about my father-in-law's condition. I reassured them, trying to calm their apparent concern. "He's going to be fine," I said. "He just needs some rest, and we'll be out of here soon." I relayed what the doctor had told me, but as I spoke, I could have sworn I heard Austin click his tongue in irritation, and my mother-in-law looked at me with a hint of disappointment. A few days later, as I was preparing to visit my father-in-law, Austin and my mother-in-law handed me a piece of paper. "Fill this out and submit it to the government office," my mother-in-law ordered, her tone cold. I looked down at the paper. It was a divorce decree, marked with green ruled lines. Austin, having overheard the conversation in my father-in-law's hospital room, sneered. "My father got weak and said he'd leave you part of his inheritance, but you're not getting a dime. Wasn't that your plan all along, marrying someone so much older? But your little scheme failed. Go file for divorce, and you'll be nothing to us." He spat the words at me, cursing under his breath. I stood frozen, stunned. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had never expected this, not in a million years. "Just go to the office and get it over with," my mother-in-law added coldly. "Austin and I are splitting his inheritance evenly. There's no one else to claim it, and you certainly won't get any. You've never even done your own housework properly." I felt sick to my stomach. My father-in-law was about to be discharged from the hospital, yet they were speaking as if his death was inevitable, as if they were already planning to divide his wealth. The thought terrified me. "How can you be so cruel?" I shouted, my voice trembling with anger. "He's your family, he's going to get better, he'll be back home soon, and I never wanted his inheritance in the first place." But before I could say more, I grabbed the divorce papers, filled them out as quickly as I could, and rushed to the municipal office. I wanted to get rid of them, get them out of my life once and for all. At the office, I handed the papers to the receptionist, but he looked at me strangely and handed them back. "Is something wrong?" I asked, my heart sinking. He checked the form and said, "Your name doesn't match." I was confused. "It's correct, I'm sure of it." He asked for my maiden name, and when I provided it, he chuckled, then said, "Your marriage certificate was never submitted. You were never legally married." The shock hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been living a lie. I took the papers back and called my mother-in-law. She casually replied, "Oh, I completely forgot. I had it all this time." I didn't buy it. I was furious. She had treated me like a servant, and now this? "You did this on purpose. You've been using me as your maid the whole time," I yelled, unable to hold back my anger. "Well, it's not like I could have asked you to take care of everything if you were a stranger, right?" She laughed mockingly. "But as a wife, you'd do anything for me. You'd never say no." Hearing her laugh and Austin's voice in the background made my blood boil. I couldn't let them get away with this. I immediately called my father and explained what had happened. He rushed to meet me at the government office. Together, we went back to the same official, who once again confirmed that no marriage registration had been made. We even got a certificate of residence, which revealed that Austin's name and address had never been updated. I had been duped into thinking I was his wife all this time. I had worked hard, taken on the role of a wife, and in return, I was being dismissed when it came to the inheritance. Even my father, usually calm and composed, was enraged. Determined to set things right, we hurried to the hospital to find my father-in-law. When he saw my father beside me, he looked surprised. "You didn't have to come all this way," he said, but after my father explained everything, his expression shifted to one of disbelief and anger. We sat in his hospital room, discussing the situation. My father-in-law was shaken, but he seemed determined. He admitted that he couldn't rely on Austin to carry on the family legacy. "I know I can't expect him to run the business properly, much less be a proper heir," he said. "That's why I want to entrust the business to your family." My father-in-law's company was in good financial standing, and there wouldn't be much of a loss if it merged with my father's business. Austin, with his poor character and lack of leadership skills, would likely drive the company into ruin if he took over. My father-in-law knew that. "I know this isn't an easy decision, but it's the best way forward," he said. "It's about preserving the future of the company." My father agreed, and I could see the relief in my father-in-law's eyes. It wasn't about taking revenge, it was about ensuring the business survived. Austin and his mother had shown their true colors, and now it was time for the legacy to pass to people who would take care of it, for the good of everyone involved. Then Austin's father burst into laughter, shaking his head in disbelief. "She's so obsessed with money that she spends all her time indulging in luxury without even a thought for her husband. She deserves this," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Turning to me and my father, he asked, "Is this enough to make up for the trouble I've caused you?" My father and I exchanged a look, our lips curling into slight smiles, as if to say, "This is just the beginning. There could be no punishment greater than what we were about to do." The very next day, My father's lawyers and accounting team got to work. After a thorough review, they decided to merge Austin's father's company into my father's, keeping the original company name. Austin, the vice president, was fired and replaced by an executive from my father's company. Formal announcements would be made once my father-in-law returned to work. This would be a massive shock to Austin and his mother, and it marked the beginning of their downfall. 2 weeks later, my father-in-law made a full recovery and was discharged from the hospital. My father and I went to pick him up, took care of the paperwork, and drove him home. When we arrived, the house was empty, my mother-in-law was gone, and Austin was busy with work. I couldn't help but think how cold and heartless they were. Little did they know, their cruelty would come back to bite them the very next day. The following morning, I returned to my original job, and I was greeted by a new vice president. The changes were already in motion. At the morning meeting, Austin's father stood before a large group of employees and announced the merger of the companies. He informed them that the vice president would be replaced and that the company would now be absorbed into my father's. Just as he finished, Austin stormed into the room, a termination letter in hand, and my mother-in-law clutching a divorce decree. "What is this, Dad?" Austin demanded, his voice incredulous. "What's going on here? I didn't hear about any of this." "I didn't hear anything either," his mother chimed in, just as stunned. How could this happen so suddenly? The room fell silent as Austin and his mother ranted, clearly not realizing the situation was far beyond their control. "That's exactly what I was hoping for," Austin's father snapped. "This is what happens when you act like this," he added, turning his cold stare toward his son and wife. "Isn't this your doing?" they both accused me, their eyes blazing with fury. "You set all of this up just because you wanted the inheritance." "I didn't do anything," I replied calmly. "You two started this mess." Austin's father silenced them with a sharp command. "Enough," he barked. "You're disrupting my meeting, get out." 2 employees quickly ushered Austin and his mother out of the conference room, and Austin's father turned back to address the staff. He apologized to everyone for the disturbance, and the meeting was promptly wrapped up. Later, when Austin and my mother-in-law had regained some composure, they came to me and Austin's father, pleading for forgiveness, but I had no intention of accepting their apologies. I ignored them both, leaving them to stew in their own guilt. They hung around the company for a while, but eventually, they stopped showing up. The security team was instructed to bar their entry, and they were kicked out of their home. According to Austin's father, they were now living in a rundown apartment near their old house. As for me, I found peace in my new life as an office worker, far removed from the drama. My father, still furious, is preparing to take legal action against Austin and my mother-in-law for the way they treated me. They've lost everything, any hope of financial stability is gone. This, I believe, is just the beginning of their descent into hell. I won't be offering any help. Of course, I hope they finally learned that how you treat others always comes back around, often in ways you least expect.